hearing myself echo is weird. All right. We are 1 week away from Easter. Typically, most churches today, they are going to talk about Palm Sunday, the triumphant entry, things of that nature. We talked about that last week. But we are going to continue our series featuring who? And this whole series is based out of Galatians 2:20. And it says, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. So as we've been going, that got loud. So as we've been going through this whole series, we've been looking at different things. It's comfort or calling. It was temporary or eternal. We've been walking through some of this, approval or assignment. And so we've been focusing on these questions. Which one are we going to feature? Which one will be displayed on my life? So, last week we talked about the struggle with Pilate. We talked about how the crowd went from Hosanna to crucify. And in that moment, Pilate is now struggling. And so now we're getting to the part where Jesus is now crucified. He's put in the tomb, and the stone is put in front. And Friday is dark, but we're not to Sunday yet. And there's something that happened in between Friday and Sunday. And it was Saturday. Saturday was a dark day. Saturday was a struggle day for the apostles, for the women who loved Jesus, and they believed he was the Messiah, but it was the Messiah that was going to release them from Roman occupation. It was the Messiah who was going to raise up an army, and they were going to now be the people who rule the world. And Sunday something happens, Friday something happens. And so as bad as Friday was, at least something was moving. We get this way, if something bad is going on in our life, at least something is happening. Sunday, breakthrough happens, and it's glorious, and at least something is happening. But Saturday was still. I don't know about you, but I know for me, silence can be a killer. If I am left to the thoughts in my head, it is bad. Sometimes comical, but mostly bad. And so Saturday is this day in between. It's the day in between heartache and breakthrough. It's the day that we struggle with. As adults, we look forward to it because it's the weekend. Like, Saturday is a fishing day. Saturday is relax day. If you're married, Saturday is the honeydew day. If you have a day off, that's the honeydew day. But Saturday was hard because nothing felt like it was happening. And a lot of us knows what that feels like. We know what that feels like, to feel like nothing is happening. We pray and nothing changes. We believe in the promise that God has said, but we feel nothing moving. I mean, you look at Mary and Martha when Lazarus dies, and they come and Jesus asks one of them, and he says, do you not believe in the resurrection? And the sister is like, I believe in it. When that day happens, it'll happen eventually, but that doesn't do anything right now with my brother in the tomb. Saturday is a struggle. If you've ever been a part of somebody passing away, and you've got to get arrangements made, the day after the funeral is typically the hardest. It's not the day after they passed away, because you have a long to-do list now. But the day after the funeral, the day after somebody is now put in the grave, now it is difficult, because now what do I do? Where do I go from here? And so what do we do in these Saturdays? In these moments on a Saturday, the question isn't, is God real? Because I don't believe that's the question that we really ask. Well, is God real? Is God there? God, where are you? I'm hurting. Saturday is where faith gets tested. Whether or not you believe that Sunday is truly going to happen. And so today's focus is the silence of Saturday, and it is going to be about fear or faith. So let's pray. Father, today I thank you. I thank you for who you are and the things that you have done. Lord, I pray for those who could not be here today. And I pray that you give us ears to hear what you are trying to speak in this season. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Get my little cliff notes here. So, when you pick up in this where we are today, Jesus is crucified, and now you have two gentlemen. One is two Pharisees. One's named Nicodemus. One is Joseph, and now they are rushing to get Jesus into the grave because Sabbath is coming in. They're not allowed to do work on Sabbath. And so, but Joseph says, listen, I've got a new tomb. He can borrow mine. And so, in this moment, the women, as they're taking the body, the women follow Joseph to his tomb. And then from there, they have to leave because now it's the Sabbath, but they want to see where he's going. And so now Jesus is buried. The cross is over. The shouting that took place just that morning is done. Everything has fallen silent. The spectacle that was the crucifixion, the mockery that the Romans performed, is all done. And now the tomb is sealed. And so from the disciples' perspectives, it was devastating. The one they left everything for is now gone. The one that they put all of their hope and trust in is now dead and behind a rock. Their Messiah was buried. And the one they truly believed was going to fix everything is wrapped in clothes, is wrapped in linens, and is now laying lifeless in the tomb. Their hopes weren't just disappointed, they were shattered. They were gone. They were obliterated off the face of the planet. Their hopes looked buried. I don't know about you, I've been there before where it felt like all of my hopes were gone. Everything that I hoped for was just gone. And so I don't know if you can imagine, and I'll be honest, when I was writing this, this one took me several days. Like, I had it in my phone, but I like taking it from my phone and I actually like writing it out. And it took me several days to write this out because I kept having to stop. Not because people were bothering me and keeping me from doing it, but because it was just heavy. And so the emotional weight of this moment, the disciples are in hiding. Peter is now sitting there doing what we all do when we do something wrong. And he sits there, and as he's just waiting for the next thing, is now having to replay his denial. John, who we know as the beloved, is probably sitting there just grieving by himself, nobody able to console him. His mother who received the promise of the Messiah from an angel, now sitting there, and the last image she has of her child is one of the cross. The disciples, not just the apostles, but all of the disciples are now scattered. The future they imagined, that they bickered about, who was going to be the greatest. In the kingdom of God, who was going to be the greatest? The one they bickered and argued about is now gone. The future is gone. Everything they thought was going to happen didn't. The hardest part of walking with God is the things that you think is going to happen are not the way they're going to happen. My plan hardly ever lines up with God's plan. Try as I might. Something happens. The other day I'm at work and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go take care of this area, and I'm going to go do this. And then they end up adding one more stop to me for the day, and I end up going into a guy's house who, he just brought his wife home, hospice is there, and I was able to talk with him about the Bible and things of that nature. It was not my plan for the day. My plan for the day was to finish up and go home, because I was tired. But God had a plan. And the disciples didn't understand it. God's plan doesn't look the way we want it to look. It's one of my favorite illustrations of, like, oh, when I'm following God and it's like a two-person bicycle just going like this, up and down, up and down. Because occasionally that's how it feels. But God's plan was not like what they expected. Because we tend, when something is happening, we tend to want to see progress being made. If it's God's plan, progress is going to be seen. If God is moving, something will be changing. Something will be morphing, and we will see it. Because we're visual people. We talked about that a while back when it came to the golden calf. What happened? They needed something visual. We assume that if God is still being faithful, it's going to be clear. We think that if God is at work, we will recognize it right away. I cannot tell you the amount of times I personally have missed it because I was expecting something big. I was expecting in a spot that something glorious was going to happen, and yet it was just a slight breeze that changed everything. But when we get in these Saturday moments, we're expecting something glorious to be happening. But some of God's greatest works comes in confusion. If you don't understand that, look at the story of Joseph, who has a dream that he's lifted above his brothers. He tells his brothers throw him in a pit and then tell their dad that he died, and then they turn around, they go rescue him, sell him into slavery. He gets sold off to another guy. That guy's wife tries to cheat on her husband with him. He takes off running. He does the noble thing. But now he's in prison, and now he's talking to two different servants of the Pharaoh's household. One's a cupbearer, the other one makes food, and they're having dreams, and he's interpreting their dreams and telling them, hey, don't forget about me. It was confusing for Joseph. I still get confused when God does certain things. My brain is like, hey, occasionally there's an easier way. Just so we know, I feel like there could have been an easier way. We were having this conversation the other night in our household. If you know anything about the beginning part of the book of Acts, there's a gentleman named Stephen in the book of Acts. And one of my children were confused as to why he didn't just shut up. Why did he not stop preaching when the Pharisees and the people started throwing stones at him? Because in my child's mind, well, if he would have just stopped talking, he would have been able to go, and he would have been able to continue to preach, and he would have preached more messages. To which my argument was okay, but now think about it. His death and his record of this event happening is still being preached 2,000 years later. So what would 5 more sermons that he may have preached done versus the 2,000 years of sermons preached off of him? It was confusing for my child. But some of us don't understand the confusions. The disciples didn't understand the confusion of the events that just took place. Some of your holiest moments in life will not feel like the most triumphant. That is fact. Some of the deepest places of trust are not built in visible victories, but in hidden waiting. I remember when my grandparents, both of them passed away. And we were sitting in the waiting room just waiting to hear what was going to happen. I struggled with my grandfather more than I did my grandmother. But I had trust that God was going to work it all out. And so some of the biggest things God does happens on the Saturday. And the waiting. And the confusion. And the struggle, where we're right off the hills of defeat, but we're not quite to breakthrough yet. And God is doing all of this work here. And so, have you ever paused a movie at the worst possible time? Like you're watching, especially, listen, if you got kids, you understand this problem. Okay? You're in the middle of like the best part. Right where the storyline is about to shift, the hero's about to have his hero arc really take place in the movie because the villain is beating him. And so you pause the movie the moment the hero's like getting punched in the face and you get all the slobber going out, and it's like the worst spot to pause it because a child has to go to the bathroom. And so anybody who's never seen that movie may walk by and be like, that is a horrible spot to pause. That is a horrible spot. Like from this one picture right here, I don't know if I want to watch this movie. You're like, that's fine, leave. I don't care. But on your way back through, bring me a drink because I'm out. Saturday felt like the worst spot to pause. It looked hopeless. It looked finished. The disciples were so confused and they were so heartbroken. The Pharisees thought they won. Satan thought he had won. What looks finished in your life may only be paused. What looks buried may still be under the hand of God. Listen, I don't know about you. There are things in my life that have felt buried and have felt finished that God has allowed to come back to life. I see it all the time. We as people see it all the time. You go out at the end of fall, beginning of winter, and a tree looks dead. There's nothing on it. All the leaves have fallen. It all looks dead. But then springtime comes around. And leaves start blooming on these trees. And you know it's alive because you start sneezing uncontrollably. But what feels sealed in your life may be a part of a bigger story. And so, when we're dealing with the Friday, and we're not to Sunday, what is it that we're doing? It's such a heavy moment on a Saturday. We want an instant turnaround. When the bad thing happens, we want the good thing right there. When the struggle happens, we want the answer right there. But a lot of times there's just silence. And so in the book of Luke accounts it this way, and it's Joseph has gotten Jesus into the tomb. The women have followed, but now they have to hurry home. Because now they're going to start preparing the incense and the things of that nature to properly wrap his body. And the Sabbath is coming, so they have to make sure they're back home. This verse is quiet. There's not a miracle in it. There's no resurrection in it. There's no angel. There's no voices. There is just silence. The women are going back to prepare the thing because they felt like it was done. We don't mind God being mysterious and not understanding what he's doing when things are going well. But when we're desperate, silence from God feels personal. Especially because we turn around and we look at other people's lives and we're like, okay, God, but you're blessing them. I attend church way more than they do. I know I give more than they do, but you're still blessing them. So why are you not doing the thing I need you to do? It feels personal. And so we don't get it. Because just because heaven's silent doesn't mean work is not being done. When heaven feels silent, we start questioning. Did God stop caring about me? Did I miss him? Is it my fault? Is it my fault God's no longer talking to me? We start thinking about the things that we did recently. We do exactly the same thing my children do when I come home and I'm like, your teacher called. They start recounting their whole day. Their teacher never called. I just like to see the panic. But we start questioning this. But silence doesn't mean absence. If you ever have a conversation with me There will be times where I'm just sitting there silent. And I'm not absent from the space. My brain is working, and my brain is calculating the situation as to what needs to be done. Sometimes silence allows you to get to the answer. Sometimes God is doing his deepest work in silence. And we don't like it. We struggle when God is quiet. We like these progress reports from God, right? When your kid brings home their report card and you're like, you did it. Or when one of my kids brings home a report card, why? Why? You're smarter than that. I didn't want to do it. Don't care. But we like progress reports. We want to be able to track everything God is doing when he's doing it. Because we feel like if we can't see God doing it, then God's not there. That God doesn't love us. It's a struggle. But here's what's beautiful. God is not limited to what we can track. Guess what? When I get to heaven, at the end of my hopefully relatively long life, I may get to shake people's hands that I personally never met. But I get to hear their stories of how their lives were changed because of my children or my grandchildren, or because of something that here in this body that we affected the community. I can't track that. I can't track the things God's doing. Isaiah says this, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than yours, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." God does not work on our preferred timeline. For all of you calendar keepers, God doesn't work on your time. God doesn't work on my time. Listen, I would love the moment my prayer exits my mouth for there to be an answer. That would be fantastic. But that doesn't happen. God does not require our understanding to remain faithful. There are seasons when the Lord speaks loud, when things are noticeable, and then there are seasons where it's Saturday. There's seasons where miracles are evident, and then there's Saturday. I don't know if any of you have ever attempted to plant something, but when you put the seed in the ground and you cover it, you water it, you make sure to trim the tree line back a little bit so there's an adequate amount of sunlight hitting it. And you're like, we're good. This is going to be my plan. You go inside, you wash up, you go to bed, you come out the next morning, and it's dirt. There's nothing there yet. And you continue to do this over the next few days, and you're like, is this thing ever going to grow? How is it that a kid's little science project with a green bean and a paper towel can grow faster than what this is growing? But what you don't see is the breaking of the shell inside. And you don't see the roots starting to form, because if it doesn't have adequate roots, then the moment it hits top soil, anything will be able to take it out. It's the same thing God does. God starts deep. God doesn't start on a surface level. God starts dealing with the deeper issue before he ever touches what you feel like is the real issue. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean nothing is happening. He can be rebuilding your faith while your circumstances still feel the same. Listen, I've got major faith in God. You want to see me rapid fire prayers, have me have a temperature. I don't feel good, I'm laying on the floor, and I'm begging at this point. I'm just, God, please, I'm dying. And my wife's like, it's 99.2. You're fine. My faith gets tested when I don't feel good. You could bring anything else to me and I'm good. I don't feel good. We're struggling. But God can be healing your heart and you still feel the same way. You still feel the heartache of the loss, but God is already dealing with it. He can be preparing resurrection while you're still standing outside the tomb. But right here is where the enemy gets involved. In these moments of when we start questioning and we start struggling, because now we're dealing with the silence. Because God is quiet, there's something else that grabs a microphone. Fear picks up the microphone when God becomes quiet. Fear enjoys feeling silence. Fear will sit there in the background while things are going good, and the moment when God is like, okay, I'm going to take a breath, I'm going to relax for a minute, here comes fear barreling through. Fear is like a toddler after you get done cleaning a room. You clean a room, you have a toddler, you didn't clean a room. All your effort was in vain. But when God hasn't spoken yet, fear speaks up. If you feel like God hasn't moved yet, fear comes and interrupts. And now, when that happens, your mind becomes full of questions. What if this never changes? What if this is truly the end? What if God forgot me? What if, because I didn't take that one chance that I truly felt like was God, what if I missed my chance? What if my promise died? What if the door is closed forever? And the Bible speaks very clearly about that. Unless God closes the door, nobody's closing the door. But this is what uncertainty does, and this is what fear feels like. That's exactly what the disciples were living in. In this moment in time, this is where we find the disciples. John 20, on the evening of the first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear. They feared that they were next. They feared that because they were followers, that the next people to be crucified were going to be them. Fear had them hiding. It had them isolated. It had the one guy who said, Jesus, I will ride with you and I will die with you no matter what, cussing like a sailor. Fear gets you to start rehearsing the worst in your mind. When God is silent, fear tries to speak for him. Fear will say silence means rejection. It'll tell you delay means denial. It'll tell you buried means dead forever. It tells you if you can't see it, then God's not doing anything. Fear fills the gaps with the worst possible situations that you can think of. Perfect example. You walk into a dark room. All the lights are out, just like little glow here and there. And all of a sudden, everything is bigger. That chair becomes a person. The shadow of a balloon now looks like a giant. And the little noise that you hear over in the background now becomes an enemy. And now becomes something you've got to fight. One of the funniest things that have ever happened. At the last church we were at, there's a downstairs area. We had motion sensors in there. And we had a birthday party. And after we cleaned up the birthday party, we left, we set the alarms. And the air conditioner kicked on. And that balloon moved. And so we had people show up to the church fully armed to take out the balloon. Cops were there because it's in a rough side of town. But fear makes it feel worse. Some of us are walking through that room right now. The worst possible situation is occurring in our brain out of fear. We worry about everything. And if you watch the news, We worry about way more than what we should. Some of us are trying to make decisions in dimness and in the dark. You're trying to hold on through uncertainty where you're holding fast, and all the while you're sitting in a Saturday moment. You're trying to trust God when it all feels dark. I've been there. And fear is sitting there and it's whispering in your ear. It's giving you interpretations of the events that God personally never said. It'll tell you God left. It'll tell you it's over. It'll tell you things will never change. You will be no better than what you are today. It'll tell you just to give up. But just because the room is dark, it does not mean God is gone. Look at the story of creation. Night and day. Night and day. God kept coming back. Whether it was dark outside, whether it was light outside, God was there. In the wilderness, God was there. Pillar of fire by night, cloud by day. Just because it's dark does not mean God's left. Just because Saturday is silent does not mean Sunday was canceled. So though Saturday looked inactive, heaven wasn't inactive. The disciples were grieving, the people were waiting, the religious leaders were guarding. Things were happening on Saturday. From the earth's perspective, though, nothing was happening on Saturday. But from heaven's perspective, resurrection was there. In Romans 28, it says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him and who have been called according to his purpose." Not in some things, not in the obvious things, but in all things. In all things, God works together for his good. He works in pain. He works in struggle. He works in silence. God crafts things even though nobody can see what's going on. God was not absent on Saturday. He wasn't distracted like, oh, I've got something else to do with my time. He wasn't defeated and he wasn't confused. He was working. He was working on Saturday. While hope felt gone, God was preparing victory. While hell thought it had won, God was writing the turnaround. While people were mourning this situation, God was setting up a new beginning. And he still does that to this day. There's a song that we don't sing it anymore, we used to. But it literally said, "You turn my mourning into dancing." That song the other day while I was writing this popped into my brain. But here's the deal. You may not see it in the diagnosis. You may not see God working in the waiting. And you may not see it or hear Him when you've prayed the same thing 20 times. But He's still working. His invisibility in a situation does not mean His inactivity. Sometimes God is doing things before. Oh, how did I write that? That's why. I got passionate when I was writing this, so it's a bunch of squiggles. Sometimes God is doing things in you before He does things around you. Just like a marathon runner, you've got to work on endurance before going out and running it. Just like a pilot needs to learn how to land the plane before he ever takes it off. God is sharpening your character, and He is forming things before you are launched out, even though it is silent. What happened on Friday was brutal. What happened on Sunday was glorious. But the impact of what's happened on Saturday cannot be missed. Because there is something powerful about a believer who can stay faithful on Saturday. Who can worship when it all feels lost. A believer who says, I don't understand it, but I trust Him. I don't see movement, but I trust Him. I don't know how this will end, but I know who holds the ending. This is a mature faith, and this is a forged faith. If we are on this earth when biblical tribulation starts to happen, this is the faith that we have to have. Because it can't be about me. Our scripture says, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. I no longer get the final word. I don't allow fear to get the final word in a situation. Christ gets the final word. And if Christ gets center stage, then the silence is no longer the final chapter, because Sunday is coming. Matthew records it when the women on Sunday morning, as soon as Sabbath is over, they are out the door. They are rushing to the tomb. And they get there, the stone is rolled away, and the angel's sitting there, and he's like, what are you doing? Why are you looking for the living among the dead? Everything changed in that moment. The silence that they felt had been broken. The stone was gone. Hope in that moment was breathing again. What looked silent was not abandoned. God's silence is never his conclusion. Your Saturday has an expiration date. You have to hold on through it. You have to trust through it. But Saturday has an expiration date. They're waiting, had a sunrise coming. Night has a new day coming. The same God who was faithful and powerful on Friday and on Sunday provided breakthrough, was still present, still faithful, still powerful, still allowing breakthrough on Saturdays. Just because you may be in a silent season does not mean breakthrough is not coming. Saturdays aren't wasted time. Saturdays can be holy time. That time when God starts really digging in and getting some deep stuff done. The time where our trust and our faith gets deeper, because just because I'm not physically hearing him doesn't mean he's not there. What besides the resurrection, what else made Sunday so glorious was Saturday? Because now this whole thought process of, oh, well, he wasn't really dead, so he was able to get out within 24 hours. No, there's a whole extra day there. So, if we're in a Saturday season, the question becomes deeply personal. What do you do when you're living in Saturday? What do you do when nothing seems to be moving? What do you do when prayers aren't being answered? What do you do when your marriage is still shaky? What do you do when your family situations are still hard? What do you do when grief still hangs in the room? What do you do when you go to the Bible and you've heard pastors and preachers and you've heard it all your life that this is living water and yet you still feel dry? When worship just feels impossible to do? There's really only one answer we have, and it's we have to choose faith. For we walk by faith, not by sight. I trust God when I can't track him. I trust God when everything is around me is failing. I trust God even though I can't hear him right now. Though I got a diagnosis that it's terminal, I still trust God. Though divorce papers were just handed to me, I trust God. Though my children are still acting the way they are, I trust God. When you choose faith and you choose trust, faith doesn't deny reality. Reality sucks sometimes. But what faith does is it counteracts the words of fear. Fear can say this is the end, and faith will say it's not over. Fear can say God forgot you, and faith says God is still faithful. Fear will tell you nothing is happening. And yet faith tells you something's happening deeper than you see it. Just like a seed. I can't see it, but it's happening. So, where in your life today does it feel like God is silent? I told you this one took me several days to write. This one hit hard. This hit me hard. Where does it feel quiet? Where does it feel unresolved? Where does it feel buried? Where in your life does it feel like it's just Saturday? Where you're still dealing with the grief of Friday, but you haven't hit the breakthrough of Sunday. As adults, all of us who work, if we have a bad day, we call it Monday. For the disciples, if they had a bad day, I'm sure it was always a Saturday. God does his deepest work in the places that feel the quietest. We may call it delay, but he calls it development. We may call it silence, but he calls it forming. You call it buried, he calls it planted. You call it over, and he calls it preparation. If everyone was standing.